What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Metal Maniacs Podcast. In the following conversation, you're going to see us talk to Alfonso Civile from the band Heartsick. Heartsick is such an awesome band, such a wide variety of sound. Alfonso is a man of wisdom and discipline. They've been out hitting the road for years and years with their former band called Know Lyfe. They've been hitting the scene, but they are more than just a local band. These guys are a national act. They're touring all over. They're doing big things, and they write just some killer music. So enjoy the conversation. All right, man. So we'll make this quick since you only got so much time. Thank you so much for coming on our podcast. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate you guys.
Yeah, I want to say our paths may have crossed before, because we played in a band called Infinite Design for a long, long time, and I swear that we played when you guys were Know Lyfe.
Yeah,
because I know you guys have been around for a long, long time. So
I feel like they were Heartsick, and we did a show at Shakespeare's, like in the basement.
Oh wow, Shakespeare's. Yeah, man, I haven't heard about that place in a long time.
Yep, I think we were kind of coming and going. Like, you guys arrived in time to do your set, and then we were done, and we were like packing up to go back to Muskegon. So
yeah.
I've definitely seen you guys a few times. Throw the fuck down. I've seen you at Unruly with a band called Dineside. They came up.
Oh yeah. Those are the homies, man. Yeah, Dineside's the shit.
Yeah, I picked up one of their CDs. They were fucking awesome. And I also enjoyed you guys out at Landmark Bar. I think Jason Mahan set the show up.
Yeah.
Yep.
The good old Mahan days.
Yeah, that was a fucking throwdown. Now, that might have been a Know Lyfe show. I can't remember.
It probably was, because that was back when we were still playing shows with Straight Line Stitch, and they were still a band.
Yep.
So
yep, they were the headliner that night, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
That was that night.
We were definitely Know Lyfe then. Yep.
Yep. So those are my memories, and I do remember you guys always throwing down and having a good time and enjoying watching your band play. And I know Jay and I we did our homework. We're all caught up. We've listened to everything.
Awesome. Oh, thank you.
So.
Yeah, I just want to say, sometimes it's hard to listen to local bands, but now that we do this podcast and we talk to a lot of Michigan bands, we listen to a lot of other things too. Like, sometimes you don't get the time to listen to other local bands or other musicians, unless you see them live or something like that, or something really sticks to you. But going through your catalog, man, super impressed. Like, you guys are really good, dude. Like, we preach. We love the heavy, we're kind of an extreme metal podcast for the most part, but we love all kinds of metal. But you guys do everything that Nick and I talk about and praise on the show. Great songwriting, great melody, but really damn heavy at times too. And that is everything you guys do is kind of like right up our alley. And I appreciate the chances you guys take with your sound too, throwing out different kind of sound and tracks throughout your whole catalog just to do what's creative. And to me, that's art. And I was just really impressed, dude. Super impressed.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, our approach, it's funny because when we were Know Lyfe, we had the same approach. It was just we used 6-string guitars, but we've always been a band that, like, I don't think anybody in this band particularly has any sort of like one specific genre of like heavy metal that we just like really only listen to. I mean, I think all of us in the band have our specific genres that we like fall into the habit of listening to a lot, but we all listen to all sorts of different shit too. And I think for us, like, since we're so eclectic as people, to only write a certain style of metal really would never fit well with us. That's why you always kind of hear like, you'll have songs like a song like Event Horizon, which is more like a metal sort of death metal type song. And then you'll hear a song like Thrill of the Hunt, which is more like hip hop, electronic. And then you'll hear a song like, Code 105, which is more like hardcore. All those songs stem from the types of music that we all enjoy. Our bass player is a very, very big fan of hardcore bands. Anything East Coast, West Coast hardcore, he loves. Most of his favorite bands are, Donnybrook, Knocked Loose, Madball, Sigurd Vall, Strife, Snapcase. That's kind of like where he gravitates towards, although he likes a lot of other stuff. I'm obviously more of like the melodic type person that likes really heavy bands, but I'd say like shoegaze and then just like metal. Like I'm a big fan of like The Haunted and uh you know, let's see, I'm trying to think of like Killswitch Engage, obviously. In Flames, probably one of my favorite metal bands of all time. You know, Pantera, Deftones, Sleep Token. Guitar players, very much more of a weird kind of metal kind of guy, like System of a Down and Portishead and Anthrax, stuff like that. And our drummer, who's just been in the band now for almost a year and a half, he's the youngest one, so he really enjoys a lot of just like newer bands. To me, so that to me is also kind of goes into what we do. And I feel like all those personalities put together just kind of make us want to make different types of metal. And I think that's what makes us different and great. But I think at times that kind of hinders us because people are so used to having just a specific type of band. You know, people, take a band like Falling in Reverse. They have a very specific type of heavy music and that's what they make, kind of thing. They fall into that sort of genre. Or a band like Poison the Well, or a band like, I don't know, Five Finger Death Punch, shit like that. They have they pick a lane, they stay in it, and we really don't. I think that's our saving grace, but I also think sometimes that could be a downfall of ours, but we don't care. We just want to make the music that we make, and that's what we like. So it is what it is. So I appreciate you listening and really putting an ear to it and seeing the depth that the music has, outside of just like what some of the songs are,
Yeah. It was a great mix. There was, some hip hop in there. I do have a question for you. There's a lot of samples that kind of go on in your music. Do you guys use those live as far as like you got the backing track and the click track and that?
Yeah, so we try not to be a very like heavy track type band, but all the synths and stuff that you hear, we do have those on our backing tracks. We really don't do a lot of guitar backing tracks except like parts that are just like we'd need 4 or 5 guitar players to make happen.
Yeah.
But everything, the meat and potatoes, it's completely us. There's always that sort of like fine line that you ride these days with, half of the community being like, fucking tracks, and the other half of the community like, I'll do whatever you want. Most of us are in our 40s. We come from the mentality of doing everything you can by yourself live, but we also a band that doesn't want to have like 7 members.
Right.
We like having 4. So a lot of the synth stuff you hear live and it is tracked, but everything else is us, man. I mean, guitars, drums, bass, vocals. So
that I think that adds a great layer. And Nick and I kind of joke because we remember coming up, especially in the death metal scene, everybody at that time was talking about, oh, drum triggers this, drum triggers that. Now it's like the discussion is, oh, backing tracks this, backing tracks that. That's kind of the new drum trigger. That's what I like to say is. But I feel like whatever serves the song. If your band isn't relying on it, I think it gets a bad rap because there are bands that rely on it the whole time. But if you can smash your songs out live without that, that's cool. If you can add that in there, I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I think with that whole discussion, I think at times what people I think a lot of that is perpetuated by musicians in general. Yeah. I think artists in general, musicians and stuff, we come from this background of sort of like, you have to do everything yourself. And if you're not doing it live, then fuck it, whatever. And I think that mentality in a way serves a purpose that has made music good and people talented, especially obviously back in the 70s and the 80s and the 60s when you couldn't really use technology the way that you use now. And I think that's great. But I think at the same time, we've done such a good job of perpetuating that sort of mentality that it also hinders the ability to sort of push the boundaries forward and still be true to the sound that you want and still be a musician and still be talented and still be playing all the things that you can play live. But it's like, there's this fine balance. It's kind of like the same thing as like, the idea of like, we've done such a good job of perpetuating the idea of what a rock star is, it's like, the groupies and all this other shit. And nowadays it's so hard to break the the public's perception of when you're on tour that you're just sitting in a van for 8 hours, 16 hours outside of a venue. You're not going out and hanging out with a bunch of chicks, and like that's not what it is. But we did such a good job of perpetuating that sort of idealism and that sort of like gimmick and that sort of stereotype that now we can't get out of it. And I think it's the same thing for, you know, the whole discussion about tracks and being live and all that other stuff. We've done such a good job of perpetuating that and sort of like stigmatizing it, that a lot of dudes are just like, oh, well, you can't do that. It's just like, well, you wouldn't get the shit that you have unless bands did stuff like that too. And obviously, like anything else, and I will say like anything else, it should be done in moderation. We've played a lot of shows in our career, and I've seen bands get up there. I can name them. I'm not gonna get up there and fake it. I've seen it 100%. I'm not down with it. I'm not down with that at all. But if you get up there and you play all your instruments, but there's stuff in the backing tracks that make it sound better and give the people more of an experience, good for you.
Yeah, I think you can have a foot in both worlds. I think you can drive yourself to be authentic and push yourself as a musician to do your part live and do it to the best, you know, within your skill set, and then just bring whatever you can through the tracks. So you're not packing like a 4-piece orchestra, you know, you're not bringing violins and cellos out on the road with you. So you gotta pipe that in. You gotta make the song sound good. And at the end of the day, I think it's about the best product you can offer your fans, right?
Exactly.
So if you got strings and you got loops or beats, you know, that you need that the drummer can't perform because you're not going to get the right sound, right? So you got the sampled beat, the electronic beat. You got to bring that live. You just have to. If you want people to put on the CD, listen to it, and then come out and see you after the fact, you want to sound like that, I think. And I think in these days, you have to have a foot in both worlds. You have to be like that 70s, 80s, practice until your fingers fall off style of musician. And then you have to be like this modern producer who knows that you got to get on stage with all the samples, the laptop, and pipe it through the PA and then do your part. So you really, I think there's, like you said, there's room for both now. And I gotta respect owning it and saying like, yeah, we use tracks, but we're playing our stuff. Like,
I mean,
you check me, but yeah, I'm playing my guitar last I checked. You know, I'm singing my vocals last I checked. You know,
of course, yeah, and you know, again, it's in moderation, right? I think if a band's doing it in a way that if the tracks fell off, you would still hear the bulk of the song. I think that's fine, but if you're a band that like if your tracks fall off and it doesn't sound anything like it does, that's a problem, right? I think we can all agree artistically you're not being true to yourself, because there's a difference between being true to the music and to the crowd and to the performance, but being true to yourself. And like you said, you have to find a fine balance of, you know, sort of mingling both together and meshing both together so that you get the final product of where everyone's like having a good time and you yourself feel like, okay, like I'm accomplishing something as well.
Yeah, I play in a band, Iron Sharpens Iron, and we played with a band not too long ago that their backing track fell off, and then he couldn't hear the guitar, and then they just couldn't play the song. And I get it, stuff happens. It is what it is.
For sure.
We're in our 40s too, so it's like we're the guys that are practicing our instruments and just really couldn't rely on anything else at the time. So it's like you got to kind of find that happy medium. You got to be able to rely on just the other three guys in your case in the band, right? And let's jam. It all starts with jamming at first, you know?
Exactly. And it's one of those things. It's like, I think in a situation like that, I'd be like, if I was watching that band live, I know that I would be like, man, that's problematic, because I feel like for me, artistically, I couldn't get out what I need to, because when we're on stage, for me, when I'm on stage specifically, and I feel like I can speak for the rest of my guys, it's a very cathartic release for all of us. Like, I think a lot of bands will get up there and they play what they play and everybody rocks out differently. But I think you can always tell when a band's up there playing and enjoying themselves and when a band's up there literally releasing something that they can't release anywhere else, right? Yeah. And I think for me, if I would have been outside on that crowd and looking at that band, I would have been like, man, that's so problematic, because I couldn't get out that sort of cathartic feeling that I get to release. It's like I'm just coming out of jiu-jitsu. I do jiu-jitsu not because I'm like a violent person or something. It's because I have a lot of inner things that I need to get out that are deep and sort of complicated and dark for me. And it's a good way to get that out and not have those sort of like feelings stuck inside. And music, it's another extension of that. So if I would have been on stage, I would have been like, fuck, this sucks because I can't release what I need to release. And if you can just get it, like we've had a situation like that happen to us before where there was a song, you know, we just redid our entire in-ear rig. We're a self-contained band. We use an in-ear monitor system. We've transitioned into that. It's a lot easier for us because toting a bunch of cabs and shit around when you're playing as many shows as us is really tough when you don't have a crew, when it's just you guys. So we use an in-ear monitor system, and we just switched it all up, and we had a buddy rebuild it, and one of our tracks just didn't work, and we're like, fuck it, rip it, let's go, you know. And if you can do that and it still sounds fine, then you're onto something, I feel.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and there was nothing. I mean, the band that it happened to, it happened in one instance. They crushed it, and they were a great band, you know. But
for sure,
at the same time, I just kind of feel in my heart, I'm like, you got to have that jam. You got to be able to jam with your boys. Like, you got to be able to rip that song off, you know. So
I agree.
It becomes a tricky landscape, but I'm for it all. I know we're tight on time, so we'll just make this quick, man. Tell me a little bit about you, though. Like, kind of how did your journey start, and now you're the screamer / singer for Heartsick?
My journey started really early. I was born in Puerto Rico, and I went to school in Puerto Rico when I was a kid, like first grade and kindergarten and stuff. And I mean, ever since I can remember, the only thing I ever wanted to do was do music and be a singer. And when I moved from Puerto Rico to Miami, Florida, I was always in choir in middle school and elementary school. My sister, she's an actress, and I was always around art because of her. And then my mom, my dad were very, very musical people. Like, they love music, but they weren't like musically inclined per se. But my mom really wanted to learn piano. She's always really loved music. My dad always wanted to be a drummer. So my dad really came from like a classic rock background, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, you know, a lot of blues, you know, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Muddy Waters, stuff like that, Eric Clapton. My mom and my dad both were into that kind of music, as well as like Spanish, Hispanic, culturally Hispanic music, merengue, salsa, you know, cumbia, stuff like that. And I always was in music. I was always part of, you know, like choir in some way or part of the school band. And then when I got into high school, I met this buddy of mine who's my best friend to this day. His name is Alex. And he was a guitar player. And then my best friend from middle school into high school and all my life as well, his name was Vinny. His name is Vinny. And Vinny started learning how to play guitar in eighth grade. So I was like, well, if Vinny's learning how to play guitar, I got to learn how to play guitar. But everybody was learning how to play guitar. And I didn't want to, like, I've always had this problem of like, I don't want to be like everybody else. So I always purposely try and do shit that's different. So if all my friends were playing guitar, I was like, fuck it, I'm going to play bass. And then we started our first band in high school when we were in ninth grade. And the band's name was Hardcore Jalapeno. Fantastic band name. But yeah, and I just kind of started playing in a high school band. You know, we did all the things that high school bands do, you know, talent shows and just little local shows here and there. And Miami at that time had a really cool like rock scene. And I started kind of getting into like heavier music because of my friends. So it was like back then in the early 90s, Miami had like Marilyn Manson and had obviously the death metal scene in Tampa, Deicide, 6 Feet Under, you know, all those kind of bands. And then, so all of my friends were listening to like a lot of really heavy bands, but also new metal was coming around. So in Florida, we had bands like Nonpoint, we had bands like Scrape, we had, you know, Creed was coming around then when I was in high school, shit like that. And then new metal popped off, you know, and it was like, we started just getting into all these other bands. And I was the bass player in the band for a long time for that particular band. We went from that silly high school name to called Wasted Circle. And I was in that until I graduated high school. And then I moved up to Michigan and I met our guitar player. And then from there, him and I started jamming together. And Jerred and I just like got along really well. We liked all the same bands. You know, we're really into like new metal, System of a Down, Core, and Fear Factory, stuff like that. And then we replied to a like Musicians Wanted ad for this drummer and this DJ and this other guitar player. And we just got together with them from this music ad and just clicked. And I was still the bass player at the time. I was still playing bass. I'd never sung in a band before. And then we ended up signing up for a show here in Lansing. And it was like 10 months like out. And we just could not find a bass player. We could not find a singer. So I was like, let me try singing. And they liked what I was doing, but we didn't have a bass player then. And we just walked out of a Best Buy one day and we ran into who would become our bass player, Waylon. And it was like, that was it. We met up that first day and it just like clicked and we were a band. And that's kind of how like I journeyed into being a frontman of a band. I'd never fronted a band before. I was always a bass player, always an instrumentalist, never really a frontman, but I always wanted to be. And it was fun when I finally did. And I enjoy it. It's really fun. I miss playing instruments. So I still like help write music and stuff. But
oh, cool. Yeah, I see that. I mean, you guys have released a lot of music.
Yeah.
So I do have a question real quick before we start. I'd like to go through a little bit of this catalog here,
Sure.
especially the Heartsick stuff. But why the name change? What happened there with the Know Lyfe? Because you guys had some momentum and you guys stuck with it for a long time. I mean, that's one thing we commend on the show, especially since we've been playing for 20 years. You know, Infinite Design was a band for 15 plus, and we're still dabbling in writing. And you know, I play in another band, so it's like we always say on this show, when the snake bites you, it's kind of hard to let that go. But why the change from Know Lyfe to Heartsick, and what did that story sound like?
So we were Know Lyfe for about 15 years. Know Lyfe, like I said, started here in Lansing by joining kind of a bunch of people that didn't know each other. And we changed the name in 2014. The reason for the name change was our drummer passed away. Our drummer, you know, he had his demons and he had some problems. And, you know, those problems and those demons caught up to him. And he, you know, unfortunately, like everything that is created has an end. And, you know, he unfortunately passed away a lot earlier than we would have all liked for him to. And during that time, it was really tumultuous. It was really weird. Not having him around and having to sort of, we all knew that he would want us to like keep going and play shows and stuff. And so finding a drummer was obviously kind of weird because it's this weird situation where you're like, are we insensitive because we want to continue, but are we like being insensitive to him by not continuing type shit? And the one thing that was always a constant for us was when he was in the band, he hated the band name Know Lyfe. He absolutely hated it. He made as much fun of that band name as he possibly could all of the time. That was always like something that was like his favorite joke was to make about how shitty our band name was and how like dated it was. Yeah. And we'd always laugh about it, but we never took changing the name seriously because, as you said, we worked so hard to get that name to where it was, that the idea of changing that name was almost like losing a limb. It was like, there's no way we can do that. We'd have to start over again.
I feel like it's worse, Alfonso. I feel like it's like starting over, man. When you give up that band name, that's a lot of recognition and power. You give it up a lot.
Exactly. We worked really hard, you know, and myself and our bass player, Waylon, our guitar player, Jerred, we've been in the same band for 25 years now. So obviously that was a lot of anxiety, but I think at the end of the day, what ended up happening was we ended up getting these two guys that wanted to manage the band, and they had asked, you know, why hasn't the band elevated more, even though you guys have so much under your belt? And they were like, it could be the band name. Let's try and change the band name. And then when Matt passed away, it was kind of like the last okay we needed for us to change the name. It was like, that to us was a good enough reason to change the name because it would then honor him in some way. And we could always think about him. It's like we changed the name because he hated it so much. So the last thing that we could do for him, you know, was change the name. And maybe somewhere out there in the ether and space and heaven, whatever you believe in, he's out there, taking credit for the fact that we changed the name.
Yeah, it sounds serendipitous that the name change was suggested, especially upon his passing, and knowing that he didn't like it. It sounds like it all worked out.
Exactly. Yeah. So, that's really why we changed the name. It just boiled down to one of those things where it's like, if we're going to do it, we need to do it now. And the way that it was put to us by the two guys that were managing us at the time was essentially like, listen, sure, people here know who you are, but nobody else in the world knows who you are. So if you change the name now, you're going to be better off. And we're like, that's a good point. So we went ahead and we changed the name.
How many band names did you, talk about before changing to Heartsick?
Oh, fuck, dude. We had I think we had over 40 band names. We had just absolute monster of a list of band names. And we were just like, how the hell are we going to choose one of these names? And it just ended up being that the way that we ended up doing it was we said, okay, whoever has the same band name on every single sheet that we have for each of us, that's going to be the name. Doesn't matter. And Heartsick was the one name that ended up on everybody's list. So we're like, well, I guess our name is Heartsick. And which is, again, serendipitous because there's so much meaning to the word Heartsick. And, he passed away and there was all this sort of like feelings about having to change the band name and all the things that we had gone through as a band. Cause we've been through a lot of shit, man. We've been through a lot of crazy shit. And so that name just is really poignant in so many ways,
Yeah. I feel like it carries a little bit of the same connotation as Know Lyfe. You got the two syllables, Heartsick, Know Lyfe. You kind of got like a good and a bad way of looking at heart, good, sick, bad, know, bad, life, good. So you kind of got a lot of things going for you that still carry over. So
exactly.
I think it really worked out for you.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate that.
It's a dope name.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the jalapeno name, but
every time it's funny because I have the yearbook of our first show ever, and it says Hardcore Jalapeno. I'm like, who the fuck thought that name was a good band? I just don't understand. I cannot give a good reason on why any of us were like, yeah, that's the band name. I have no idea. I don't even remember why we chose that band name.
Sounds like a Laffy Taffy or something.
Jalapeno. I don't know. The 90s, man. The 90s were wild, I guess.
Straight heat.
So I want to talk a little bit about your catalog. You guys have a deep catalog, and man, that work does not go unnoticed on our show. So kudos to you. I've already talked about the depth of the catalog and me being impressed by it. I went through the whole thing. The one thing that irks me sometimes is if you go on Amazon, anybody can release anything under any name now. So there's a few things that are on the Amazon catalog where I'm this isn't the Heartsick I'm trying to listen to, so skip this one. There's this one band that's completely hardcore, and then there's this rapper dude that has shit on there too.
It's so it's fucking problematic.
Yeah,
dude.
It's it seems like it should be whoever had it first, and then after that you need to have, you can't upload music under that name unless it's Heartsick 0254, or you know what I mean? I think whoever staked the claim first, that is a problem with anybody being able to release music under any name, because then your catalog gets convoluted with all this stuff that isn't actually you guys. But taking it back, you guys had the self-titled on came out in 2015, so that was kind of basically your first stuff after you changed the name and kind of got going again. Is that what it sounded like to me?
Yeah. So that record basically was a bunch of songs that we had written that were going to be released under Know Lyfe, and then we changed the band name, and we were like, fuck it. So we ended up recording that record. It was 16 songs, and we started recording the record with a guy out in White Lake, Michigan, whose name is Josh as well. And we did a few songs with him, and then we started having conversations with our buddy Josh Schroeder, who's done King A10, Lorna Shore, all those types of bands. And we really wanted to go to him. So we kind of did the record half and half, because half the record was already done with Joshua Wickman, but we started recording the other half of the record with Josh Schroeder, and we just said, screw it, we'll just put all these songs together and just release it, because it kind of has a vibe of Know Lyfe and then switching into Heartsick. So that's kind of where that all came from. And then we did our second record with Josh Roeder. And we've been with Josh Roeder ever since. We haven't used a different producer since 2015. Everything we've done is with Josh Roeder.
Yeah, your whole catalog sounds really good. It's very professional.
Thank you.
I mean, it's top-notch production. I definitely noticed that. Can you tell me a little bit about just kind of you guys' release? Like, did you guys have a strategy, or you're just like, let's consistently put out music? Because your catalog's a little strange in the fact that you have a few albums in there, and then you have a lot of singles, but some of the singles are on some of the albums, and then some of the singles aren't. So it's kind of like, but you've always stayed consistent, so I can see you guys been working. I was wondering if you guys were like, did some stuff in-house just because of how much stuff you have put out. But can you tell me a little bit about your strategy, or was it just like, let's put out as much as we can?
So none of us know how to record.
Okay.
Okay.
I
have no idea I've just started to learn how to record in my 40s, which is fucking sad and pathetic that I'm admitting that, but that's the absolute truth. So we've always gone and recorded with somebody. And like I said, since 2015, we started doing records with Josh Roeder. When we first started, I think a lot of that was how the it's interesting because when you look at our releases, if you look at the timeline of how the internet had started to change bands, we were kind of trying to like follow that and try and keep up with how people want to listen to their music and how to digest music. And then also how to inadvertently play the game that is the music industry as well, because you have to be honest with yourself. This is a game. And if you want to try and at least, if anything else, stay relevant, which is what we try and do, you have to be able to understand the shifts in the market. You have to be able to understand the business side of things. You have to be able to understand how releases are done. So with our first release, there was no plan. We just fucking released a bunch of music because we were coming out as Heartsick. So it was like, let's get as much out there as possible. Our second release started seeing us realize that you needed a marketing plan. And this was back when bands started to realize this as well. And the internet was really picking up for bands to like start doing marketing strategies and stuff. So our second record, we started releasing a single here and single there, and then put it on the record. Because then we kind of learned that like, if you release a single and you get plays on it, and then you eventually release a record that has that single on it, you're only adding to the plays of that record. So you're essentially playing the game that record labels in the music industry loves to play. And that's basically is sort of like fake it till you make it type bullshit, which we don't like, but it's like, oh, well, look, this record came out and it has this many plays already. But if you dig a little deep, you're like, well, that song already came out and already had a bunch of plays. But because of how the record industry works, you can just add on those plays to that record. And then, hey, lo and behold, you have 80,000 plays on a record that was released 2 days ago, but realistically, it only had 3 singles that were out, and they just added those. So we started realizing that you had to play that game, because if not, then nobody knows. The algorithm doesn't give a fuck about you. Nobody cares, sort of shit. And then when you start seeing us release EPs and singles at the same time, that's when we were like, okay, so we need to release these singles with a video to get the plays and all the stuff that we need. And then we release the EP that has one new song on it so that it counts. So it's just us flat out. Like I have no fucking anything to hide. I will talk about this shit all day. It's just us learning the system and the game that is the industry and being like, fuck it. You know, like we got to do what these other dudes are doing in bigger bands, because if not, then we're just going to be some local band. And we're not, you know, we're not a local band, like in the sense of like, there's this connotation that local means less than, you know, it's like this idea that like, if you're in a local band, then automatically it's just, again, this whole sort of conditioning of music fans and artists that, you know, hey, are you going to go to the show early? Well, no, just, you know, there's just a local band opening for those nationals. And it's like, but hold on. Why is a local band always put in negative light comparative to a band like Slipknot or everything else who started as a fucking local band? Like, what? That doesn't make any sense to me.
And they're
right?
still local in their hometown, really, if you think about it.
You know what I'm saying? Really, if you think about it. You know what I'm saying? Exactly. But there's this weird conditioning of society that has consistently villainized and, marginalized local musicians as less than, as not good enough, as not as top tier as some other bands. And I'll be the first one to tell you, there are some local bands, there's some unsigned bands that are underground bands that are 800 times better than 90% of the music that you hear on the radio. The difference between them and those bands is that they're fucking broke and they don't know they don't know the business model, and they just don't care to know it. For us, all of those releases that you saw is literally us learning the business models of how this industry works and trying to play that game. If anything else, just to stay relevant and give our fans the reality that we are still out here, we're still making music, and we're still fucking, in our opinion, killing it the way that we know how to do it. So that's why you see all those singles, and that's why you see some of those singles not being released on a record, but then come back on some other record and stuff like that. It is just a way to fuck with the numbers, to get these dickheads at the top to recognize what we're doing. That's really what it is. And I advise every single band to do that same shit, because if you take what they do and you start running with it, it'll just annoy them, and then they'll try and change it again. And you just keep doing it until we hopefully maybe, fucking get rid of these dickheads, but probably never happen. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's a smart way to do it. Have a marketing strategy. There's a lot of bands that just shoot from the hip and don't do that. So, but I know you guys shoot for the stars. You guys go on tours and all that. So, I mean, I don't think you're no local band. There are several bands that we have interviewed on the show that I would put their music up against any band, period.
Straight up.
You guys are definitely one of them too. Like being able to listen to your catalog, and a lot of your stuff could fit next to a lot of bands. But what's cool about your band is the actual genre or subgenre could change multiple times within that, but all of the stuff that you guys have put out is top notch. So I don't like the local band thing either, because like I said, we've talked to so many bands so far on the show, and they've all been top notch professionals, touring, doing all the stuff. So you just happen to be from Michigan. That's about
It's like it's one of those things where it's just like we've conditioned people to believe some certain type of title belongs to a certain type of person or group or whatever, that then marginalizes them and puts them into this neat little box of less than, when the reality is that that's not true. You really can't put people in a box for too long until they decide that they want to break out. And I think now more than ever, especially with the technology that we have, you can't just put a band under the local band banner, because I've listened to Iron Shaped Siren. I would put Iron Shaped Siren up against Madball or anybody else and be like, tell me which is the local band. And they can't tell you, because that's the reality of it. But the moment you say, well, that's the local band, for whatever reason, people's mind goes, oh, well, I guess it's not that important. It's like, no, you're dumb.
Yeah.
So, Alfonso, do you think that a record label is something that you guys would do in this day and age, the way the industry is, or do you guys plan on continuing on under your own?
You don't have a choice. You have to have a record. I will always say that. And I will tell you the reason why you don't have a choice and you have to have a record label is because there's so much power in the industry with the people that own those things that they will never allow you to be successful on your own. Because if they do, then you're taking money away from them that they want. That is why you see bands like Korn and everybody else who could 100% just be independent bands, but don't, because it's a lot of work. It's really hard. And it's like, I find that interesting because there's a lot of local bands that do it just fine, but eventually get sort of sucked in to the record industry, getting a record label and stuff, because they don't want you doing it by yourself. It's like the industry has changed so much, man. It's like if you look at it, record labels these days are still necessary because they control all of the assets that you need to be able to be successful and get the things like bigger tours. And what I mean by successful is it's not the merch, it's not the marketing, it's not that. Because realistically, if you can get good at that, you can do that on your own. But good luck getting on a good tour. Good luck getting recognized by anybody that is worth the shit that's going to be able to open doors for you until you decide, until you basically essentially agree to give them the money that you're making or to give them the clout that you're getting, because they need to own that. If they don't own that, then they don't have a stake or power in your career. So, and there's so many powerful people in those markets, in those areas, that you're never going to be able to get away from it. Absolutely, we would take a record deal as long as it allows us to grow the band and causes the least amount of damage that a contract can cause. Because the reality is, you have to be smart. You have to be a smart band. You have to be self-aware, and you have to be honest with yourself. If you're going to sign any deal whatsoever with any record label that has any sort of power, you are giving up rights to your art, to your music, and you have to be okay with that. You, however, do still have power. You can minimize what that damage is to you financially by getting a good contract, getting a good lawyer, getting somebody who knows what they're doing, and it becomes somewhat beneficial and somewhat of a symbiotic relationship, right? Because that's what a record label is. A record label is an entity that's going to help you use their connections to get you to certain places. It's going to get you a better manager. It's going to get you a better booking agent, because people go, who is this band? Heartsick. They don't have a label. They don't have a manager. They have nobody. We don't care. But who is this band? X band. Oh, this X band has this little label that actually works with this guy, that works with this guy, and we know him, blah, blah. And there you go. There it is. You know what I'm saying? So you have to have a label these days. You can't get away from it. But you can retain power for yourself if you're smart and you're business savvy and you understand what the game is. You know, that's why I think it's always comical when bands are like, oh, well, we're fucking independent and we're going to do whatever the fuck you want. It's like, no, you're not. No, you're not. You're going to eventually fall into something, and you're going to have to give up power, but be smart about the power that you give up. You know, I liken all this shit to like martial arts, man. It's like, you have to give up a position and you have to give up a certain place on the mat to then be able to execute what you want to execute and be in a better position later, you know?
Yeah, it's like getting set up for it, for sure.
Exactly.
So what's your heart out? Do you got to go here?
No, man. I mean, I've got some time, dude. I've got until literally about 1 o'clock, man.
Okay, so you got about 15 more minutes?
Yeah, 15, 20. That's fine, dude.
Okay, cool. I just don't want to hold you up here.
No, you're good. You're good.
Can you tell me a little bit about, I mean, I went through your whole catalog, and we could talk about the whole catalog, but with only 15 minutes left, I want to get a couple of these other questions in here, if you don't mind.
Sure, absolutely.
Tell me a little bit about the last tour experience, because we're good friends with Mike Miller. He's your
that's
merch
the boy.
guy, and I mean, his band itself, you talk about not local bands, those guys are
Vestigial's
awesome,
amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
Great fucking band.
Yeah, so it's like that's one of the bands that come to mind. But it's funny, he does merch and stuff for you. Great kid. I love that dude. He's awesome. But tell us a little bit about the last touring experience. I think it's the same. I kind of know, but I'd like to hear it from your side and kind of what happened. And
so we have been playing shows consistently. We just finally have come to a point where we have a few months off before we start playing shows again. So basically right around the middle of July all the way till just last week, we had shows, and it was either like we were gone every 4 days and then come back and then leave another 4 days, or be gone for like 5 days. For us, we've been playing shows and touring long enough that we've discovered what works well for us and what works well in general. I think a lot of bands, especially younger bands, have this mentality of, we need a tour. And it's like, well, why do you need a tour? Well, because that's what you do. You go out and play shows. Yeah, but what's the point of playing shows if nobody's there? Who the fuck knows who you are? Like, that's stupid. You're doing nothing beneficial for yourself besides burning out not only yourself, but the rest of your band members who are
resources too.
Resources, and that are, and that you need to be able to keep morale up. Because the reality is, if you play 100 shows in a year and 30 of those shows had 100 people or 50 people at them, and the other shows had 10 people, your band members are going to be less likely to want to go out and play shows and be gone for that long, be away from their friends, their girlfriends, their families, their jobs, because they're broke and all this other stuff. That it's fun to be a musician and it's fun to be in a band, but it you start realizing as you get older that there has to be an intrinsic reward of some kind in some way. And if you're always playing shitty shows, then the band morale goes, and then the band implodes, and then that's it, kind of thing. For us, we've discovered that for now, what we're doing and learning how to play the internet game, which you have to learn how to play, and also playing shows from Thursdays through Sundays is probably a better idea than being gone for a month and a half and playing 40 shows and 20 of them being good shows. Like, that doesn't make any sense. We're trying to build ourselves up to a point where we get a good tour offered to us, where we can, it then makes sense to be playing all the time. Because if we can get a tour with, say, a band like Nonpoint, then we're guaranteed that we're going to be playing to 100 people plus when we're there as the opening band or more than we are doing a tour by ourselves and only playing a 30. Now, not saying that that's what we do. We've become better at promoting ourselves. We've heightened the visibility of the band. So we're very fortunate. We can go to certain states and there'll be 60, 70 people, and that's great. But our experience is always trying to make it so that it's worthwhile in some sense. There has to be something that makes it worthwhile no matter what. So the way that we work our tours and the way that we work our shows is no matter what, very, very, very rare that we don't get one of these is everybody gets food. The band pays for food no matter what, at least once. We always are able to get what we need from a show. So being like food, water, something on top of that. And if we're out touring consistently, if we're gone for 2 weeks straight, 3 weeks straight, or whatever it is, everybody gets some form of pay, and we try and figure out what that budget is to pay everybody so that it's worth it. Because at the end of the day, sure, all of us, everybody in this band loves touring, wants to be out on the road touring. But I cannot ask any of my guys to leave their homes, their kids, their wives, their girlfriends, their jobs, to come back with $0.00. That's not fair. That you have to pay your bills. So something has to come of that. If all the shows suck, we still want to be out there and be playing shows, but we need to come back home with something. So that's kind of how we work it. It's like, okay, we're going to be gone for X amount of weeks. This is the X amount of flat rate that you're going to get for the entire tour. Or if we're going to be gone for all these shows, every show that we have, you get paid food no matter what. You get all these things, everything's provided for you. Your sticks, your guitar strings, your picks, all that stuff is paid for. So that's how we work it. So none of the band members in our band pay for drumsticks, pay for, drum heads, strings, guitar repair, nothing. It's instruments, all that shit is provided by the band, at least. Because then it's like, cool, I didn't have to pay for any of this shit, and I can still go out and do what I need to do and go work. So that's kind of how we work it.
Right.
Oh, yeah. What happened with the van?
Yeah, we were waiting for that part.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I forgot that's a sore spot.
Specifically the van. We want to hear it.
Yeah.
Fill it.
Okay. So I take immaculate care of all of our equipment, and I take immaculate care of our band because it's an expensive resource. It is a huge investment. And the band that we've had now for almost 4 or 5 years, we bought the band with 104,000 miles, original miles. The band has 287 or 47,000 miles or something. We knew that the transmission would eventually need to be replaced because just the high mileage is just a lot of miles on an original transmission. But there was no signs of trouble with the transmission. Realistically, everything seemed fine. A week before we left for that specific tour to go play out in Canada and play some shows in Canada, we had the van at the mechanic to make sure that it was good to go. Mechanic was like, we don't really see anything wrong with it. Obviously, with as many miles as you have, you definitely want to get it replaced sooner than later, but you should be good to go. Everything was fine. We made our drive all the way up to Minnesota. The van started acting a little weird when we got to Minnesota, but it was fine. We get out of the show, starts up fine. There's no issue. And then we're about to get to the Planet Fitness where we're going to take a shower. And the van just straight up, the transmission just literally just starts making this crazy grinding noise and just stops working. And I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure the transmission's fucked. And, we called a tow truck to get us in the morning to tow the van to a mechanic shop to see what it would cost to get the transmission done. And, Morning comes around and we get a text message from the insurance company. Sorry, there's no tow trucks. We can't get you. Luckily, whatever you want to believe in, either way was on our side. And it was like, we were at the top of a hill at a Planet Fitness, and I did a quick Google search, and it ended up being that a mechanic shop that was specifically for transmissions that could get fixed same day was down the hill 5 minutes away.
Dang.
So I literally got the van to drive and go forward, and we went 70 miles per hour down a hill with our trailer, up another hill, and pulled in to this mechanic shop. And they were super cool. It was very expensive. It was like when it was all said and done, between the gas and the fucking repairs and all the other shit, was like $6,800. We were stuck in Minnesota for most of the day. We missed our show in Canada, but man, it's like, I think in retrospect, looking at it, it sucked not being able to play in Canada, because that's trying to get out to other countries is a huge goal of ours. But we ended up getting the transmission fixed that day. We raised all of the money to get the transmission paid for. We got 2 new shows to make up for the show that we lost, and we got back home safely and everything worked out. So, I mean, it sucked being stuck on the road like that in a little bit of an instance, but realistically, it's been so long since we've been stuck out on the road because we take care of our shit. We've done it, man. We've been on the side of the road with a flat tire. We've been on the side of the road with a, blown radiator. We don't want to do that shit anymore. We're too old for that. So we take immaculate care of our shit. So
yeah, well, glad you guys made it back, and it just seems to happen to everybody at some point. Something happens. Every band that's out touring, every time something happens with a van or accident. At least you guys weren't in an accident, something like that. People not paying attention, or
we've had accidents before. We've almost died in a van. So we've back in 2005 or 4, we rolled our van like 5 times in the middle of winter. Hit some black ice, almost killed all of us.
Oh,
we've done that.
Yeah, I saw that. You might know this band, I See Stars. They're from the area.
Yep.
And they just had a problem with their bus just prior to upheaval, like leading up to like a week or 2 prior to upheaval. They were on their way to a gig, maybe in Tennessee or something like that. Couldn't make it. They had to cancel it. So bigger band, so to speak.
It happens to everybody. You're not immune to breaking down.
Yep. So definitely glad you guys came out of that one on top.
So we got a couple minutes left here. So what's next for Heartsick, man? I heard you say something about taking a little bit of time off, but what's the plans going forward for you and with the band, and what can we look forward to?
Yeah, so all of us are having anxiety of not playing shows for 2 months, so that's terrible. Our drummer, Barrick, he had a vacation plan with his family, and he, very long story short, his brother had a very bad accident. His brother had a traumatic brain injury about almost 2 years ago. His brother is now, disabled for the rest of his life, and his family, they need to get away, and they need to go and do some things, man, and just be a family together and try and, mend the wounds that don't heal physically, so him and his family are going out to Europe for a nice vacation for about 3 or 4 weeks. We're taking some time off because he'll be gone. We've been offered a couple shows here and there, but they don't really make a lot of sense to go through the trouble of trying to find somebody to like fill in for us. If we do get something in between now and then, that makes sense. Maybe we'll find somebody to fill in on drums. For now, we have from now till all the way pretty much the middle of October, we have off. So most of us are just chilling. We're just working, practicing, going back, learning a few new songs that we have recorded. We have about 11 brand new songs that are completely done, that have been recorded for a while. We're working on releasing another video for a song on our covers EP that we just released. So that video should be done by the end of September and released by then. We'll be announcing a record here sometime real soon. And then we have more recording with Josh Roeder, probably either in December or February. We're going to go back and do another 5 songs. And we think we'll release a new record probably in February or March. We're looking at a 3-week tour starting in June of next year, and probably another like 2 or 3 4-day runs with a few other bands in the spring and March that we're doing. We have a plan to go out to Puerto Rico and play some shows in December in Puerto Rico. So the band's very much active. It's just the next 2 months are kind of just like chill, relax, working on new videos. Like I said, we've got a bunch of new shit that we're trying to just kind of put together and figure out how we want to package it all. So very busy, but right now we're enjoying a little bit of time off, but also don't like not playing shows. So it's a bit of a weird part. And then we're actually working on some rebranding where we've completely redone the logos and stuff. We've hired a marketing friend of ours who does very good artwork and is helping us sort of rebrand the band. So you'll be seeing brand new band photos, brand new logo, brand new imagery. We're going to do the whole thing and really sort of reinvent the band for the new year in 2025.
Well, will that coincide with a sound change, or were you guys?
No.
Okay.
No, we love what we do. We love the music that we make. We have no plan on changing any of the sound. We're just going to make songs that we like, and that's it.
Yeah. And you guys are eclectic enough. You didn't really have to go out of your way to sound any more different.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't think that us changing our sound is really going to affect anything because we're just a different band already. I feel like it's not, wrong to say that. I feel like we have an original sound and it doesn't need to really be changed. So
no, you can say that. I listened to the whole catalog last night. You guys are not all over the place, but there was,
ebbs and flows for sure.
Yeah, there was ups and downs in terms of like, okay, we're really intense, and okay, now we're almost at it like an R&B type of sort of an element. I know I heard some rap in there a little, just like one track or something, but still, the fact is, it's there. There's diversity there. I love the diversity. It's awesome.
Thank you.
Very dynamic. So go ahead, Nick. Did you have something?
I was just gonna say like the back end of sleep cycles. Once you got to Methylene Blue, and then on the way out, it was like a entirely different album almost. I felt like it was heavy up front for like 6-7 songs, and then you kind of it went a little bit more rock pace or a little bit more atmospheric, if you will. And I was like, man, I fucking love. I'm like, I kept checking song titles. I'm like, okay, Love Letter. Yep, that's good. Yep, Shadow, like that. Yep, for good. So I was just like noting. I just wanted to say that to get it on record. Like, it was a great album up front. It hit me in the face. I was like, fuck, this is heavy. Jay told me to watch out.
Thank you.
and then when it got into like the more rock elements, or like just kind of stripped down a little bit, I was like, man, I am enjoying every fucking song on this album. So
thanks, man.
You guys rebrand all you want image wise, but keep the sound like as is, because it's dope.
Thank you. Yeah, well, it won't change, I promise.
Well, this is a good place to wrap up. I know you got to go. Thanks for your time today, brother. Is there anything?
Thanks for having us, man.
Is there anything that you want to say? Anything you want to let people know before we let you go?
Whoever's watching, especially these, younger people, especially people with dreams, ideas, goals. My advice is, as an old dude who has seen a lot and has been in a lot of positions with this band and seen scenes change, don't give up. The internet is going to tell you that everything should happen really quick. And the reality is this music thing is not a next day type shit. It is a grind, and it's a very slow grind. And like martial arts, like anything worth learning, like anything being good at, it is going to take you a long time to feel like you have an understanding of what's happening, but you'll never be good at it, because if you believe you're good at it, then you stopped learning, you stopped evolving. So never give up. Go out there, do what you're supposed to do, put the work in. Don't talk shit about other people. Focus on yourself and enjoy the ride, because you have at best 80 years or 90 years on Earth, and at worst the very next day. So just, enjoy the ride, man, and just be out there and be thankful, because there's a lot of people out there that don't even get to do what you're doing. So, or people are out there that are just afraid to just be creative because they don't want to be criticized. Just be yourself.
Cool, man. I like that. Thank you so much for your time. Keep doing your thing. You guys rule. I would love to extend the invite for you to actually come on the show sometime, maybe with the band. If you guys want, I would love to sit down for, a couple hours and dive deep into the whole process.
Yeah, let's do it.
Talk to all your guys, like especially if you got something new coming out and want to promote. Love to have you guys up. So the invitation's always there. Love to. I know even Iron was supposed to play a show with Heartsick or something this past, and something happened. But maybe
we're gonna make it happen.
Yeah, hopefully in 2025 we can actually shake hands and meet up and play a show together too. But like I said, man, you're always welcome. We appreciate what you do. Thanks for all the hard work, you sticking at it all these years and doing your thing, and we really appreciate it, man. You guys kick ass. So look out for Heartsick. Go subscribe. Go do all that stuff. Follow them. Do that. So all right, Alfonso, thanks for your time, man.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much. You guys be safe. Okay.
Yep. Peace, man.
You too, man.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Yep. Later. Cool guy. Good times.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, I've had every chance I've had to see them was awesome. Like at least 2 times in memory that I know that I stood there and I watched them like front to back, and it was just an excellent show. They really bring it live. They crush live. I love that part about them. Like their guitarist was just an animal live. Alfonso was all over the stage, almost like a la Randy Blythe from Lamb of God, just bouncing around. So really great group of guys. So looking forward to see them again now that I've had like a more intimate conversation and getting to know Alfonso.
We're still recording here, so I'll just say this. So he said that for 15 years we called ourselves Know Lyfe, and now we're Heartsick, same band, same dudes, no new name, and he kind of went into that or whatever. But they have a really cool website. I mean, the dudes are super professional, man. They got their bio on their website. They talk about them, so nothing but kudos to them. I've heard their name for a long time. Obviously, heard Know Lyfe, but man, what a great catalog! What a great bunch of music, and super cool guy, and I really would love to get them on the show so we can have more of an intimate sit down. I think their music deserves a more deep dive discussion, if you will.
Sure.
Especially with all the work that we put in to listen to it all. Can't get much out in 60 minutes, but I think we got the majority of what we wanted to get. But it would be nice to dive in deeper with those guys, and cool active band.
I could see them. I could see them on the road with like Nonpoint or Seven Dust, just in terms of like some guys that have been doing it and they're road dogs. That's kind of how I view Heartsick, is they've been doing it for so long now, and I think they've got enough name recognition and they've got they could have some staying power. I don't know what it takes, when you're in a situation like them where you're not a local band anymore and you're waiting to break through on that nationwide or even international scale. Like I think they're right on the precipice of that. Again, sometimes I say it's a stroke of luck. And I know they don't want to burn themselves out, doing things that don't make sense. But I think, they could be on a big tour and they could break bigger any day, really.
Yeah, for sure.
Like they're like listening to the last EP and the 2 albums. The Mind, Body, Spirit just blew me away. I fucking loved it, man. Like
that EP.
Them 5 originals like just slapped me across the face every single track. I was like, this is heavy, and the production too. That's what really sold me. Is like, you can have heavy music all day, but they had like the good crisp quality sound production in the studio.
Yeah.
They had like they had the electronic beats kind of, and all that atmosphere that you get piped in. That's why you bring the laptop to the stage, right? That's why you bring the backing tracks, because they're already going to play their instruments, but you want it to sound as thick and as full as it does on the CD or on the album. So I think that get them guys on a bill with a bigger name, carry them around the country for a few weeks, man. I think get them on Liquid XM, man. Get them on the radio. Get them on Octane. I think that right there. I mean, if whoever's in power of doing that for those guys, like get them on the radio somehow, like on the satellite dish, because I see bands like just blow up crazy because of that shit. I think Nothing More, Spirit Box, Sleep Token, Bad Omens, and I'd say get them on a tour with those bands, if that were possible, because like they fit in that vein kind of where they're heavy, but they can also be mellow and chill. And their production sound, I'd put their production up against that production. I'd listen to one after the other and not know what's the difference.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, like I said, the total professionals all the way out. I mean, song after song, too, I was just like, this song is awesome. And then I'd listen to another song, and it'd be different. But I'm like, this song is awesome, too. It's like they are just a great band. And it's like, we're not just saying that because they're on the podcast.
No.
We're fans of music, and you can tell these guys take their art serious. And like I said, it's everything we always preach about. Great songs, great melody, but heavy as heck at times, you know. Just, I mean, crushingly heavy. Some spots even almost weirdly death metal, and he does like this like gremlin vocal that sometimes sounds like Marilyn Manson and sometimes it sounds black metal. It's strange. And they don't get into the black metal territory. Like, they're not that wild, but some of their heavy stuff is really heavy, you know. And I don't know. I think they have a place. You know, some other bands we've had on the show, you could tell that they're on to bigger and better things, and I think they would definitely be one of them. So,
I think a lot of bands that we've had on this show, like, they could take a note from what Alfonso was saying just now, in terms of how they conduct themselves and what they can expect, and how they should really invest their time and energy into a band if they want it to succeed. If it's just your hobby, then just be real about it, because as he stated, like, at some point along the ride, like, it kind of gets burnt out if it's just your hobby. You're like, well, you know, like, maybe I would just prefer fishing, and like, maybe I don't want to like try and rally the troops all the time and do all these shows to unknown audiences. Whereas if you really grind and you're really dialed in on what you're supposed to be doing, you will find yourself on those bigger shows in bigger venues, and those venues will have people in them, and you'll be doing shows at a good time and not a Tuesday, but more like a Friday or a Saturday, when you want to have where you can expect an audience, you know. So it's just being smart about it, I think, is the thing, or finding somebody who is smart about it. Sometimes you don't even need everybody in the band to be great at their instrument, but one guy might want to be an artist or a promoter, you know, like a booking talent agent. Like, you might want to have one guy in the band who kind of learns as he goes, and you teach him to like do his role as a musician to the best that you need him to, but then can like fill some of the holes, because not everybody's out here with a lawyer or, you know, a team of people helping your band. You don't really get that until you earn that, and you got to put that work in first. So,
and it's nice to have four guys all in that same like professional mindset too. Like, that's where I think benefits them big time, is when you have four guys that understand that, instead of just dragging another guy along. Like, no, this is what we have to expect. This is our job. This is what we have to do. And this is, I mean, it's cool. He said, you know, this is what you'll get out of it. But at the same token, sometimes you don't get a lot out of it, you know. But
you gotta really want to do it, man. That's how I feel about it. Like, you gotta really want to do it. You don't want to go out there and do it at a loss, though. I don't think anybody wants to do that.
No.
No matter how much you want to play music, you never want to be like throwing money at it like that.
Unless you're like somehow, you know, extremely wealthy in some other endeavor, you know, selling GameStop stock or whatever, and then you just got piss away money, and you can like, oh, I'll play in front of nobody just to go on tour. I mean, hey, why not? But all right, man. Well, he had just messaged me too, and he's like, sorry, I didn't realize we'd like to go 90 minutes, which is perfectly fine. Anytime is cool, but I would love to have those guys on the show sooner than later. But with that being said, man, I will talk to you soon, brother.
Sounds good, Jay.
Peace.
Thank you so much for checking out the episode. Be sure to hit that like button and give us a share.
Yeah, and if you enjoyed our podcast today, please give it a rating on your streaming service to help us gain some exposure.
And if you really enjoyed the show, please give us a follow or hit that subscribe button and come hang out with us every week. And remember, keep it metal.